Hello, Curious! In 1992, a true horror movie legend was born. The Candyman scared viewers, and most of the people who decided to buy a ticket to the screening literally were afraid to look in the mirror and say the main character's name 5 times, believing that he would suddenly appear behind their backs. The terrifying assassin with his hand tipped like a hook now returns to the screens again to spread terror. And the newest Candyman is set to be premiered on August 27th and is the best opportunity to tell you the true story behind this movie production. So what happened in the 1980s in Chicago that the Candyman could be born? And how has it been ceased to be that just an urban legend and has become such a story much more true than it might seem? And is it possible that once again a dangerous killer actually came out of the mirror? In a moment, you will know the answers to all these questions. And if you want to be up to date with our next episodes with the wow effect, remember also to click the subscription button, click the little bell button, and give us a thumbs up. So let's get started. Almost 30 years ago, Bernard Rose started directing the horror film Candyman, and one of his inspirations was a novel by the British writer Clive Barker, which for the first time introduced to the world a killer with a rather candy nickname. And the book was written in 1985 and was entitled The Forbidden, and its main character haunted apartments in Liverpool and took a deadly toll. And the choice of this place was not accidental because that was where Barker was born, and while writing about Candyman, he drew full of handfuls from urban legends. His hero, for example, owned the hooked hand to a creature called the Hookman, which according to the stories told in various versions, attacked young people spending its pleasant moments in cars parked in Remote's area. So the Hookman was possibly a fugitive from a mental hospital, and he always wore a raincoat, and the story of him began circulating in the United States in the 1950s. And another inspiration for the book Candyman was also the Bloody Mary, which according to the legend appears when someone repeats her name 3 times in front of a mirror. But now let's get back to the Candyman. So you already know where the hook for his hands and the mirror motive comes in, thanks to which he comes into this world from, and although it's worth mentioning that he also has something from a biblical Samson, and it's also who, according to the parable, kills the lion whose belly and the bees build their nest, and inspired by this motive, Clive Barker in his novel described that the Candyman fell victim to the stings of thousands of bees, and then returned from beyond the grave, always surrounded by a swarm of these insects. This was also shown in the 1992 movie, but as we mentioned a moment ago, The Forbidden was just one of the inspirations for the creating of this cult film horror. And another was the true story of a woman deprived of life by an assassin who emerged from the bathroom mirror. So contrary to appearances, this story does not contain paranormal threads, as you will see in a moment. The tragic events took place in 1987 in the Abla homeless estate in Chicago. In one of the skyscrapers lived 52-year-old Ruthie Mae McCoy, known to her neighbors as a stubborn old lady with mental problems. And in fact, the woman spent many of her years in various types of centers, and when she was in remission and the doctors decided that she was able to function independently, she was placed in a communal flat, which had the infamous fame of one of the most dangerous buildings in the city. And a no less formidable place was the Abla Homes block, where the drug addicts and alcoholics lived on almost every floor. Dingy elevators rarely worked, and pitch black and shabby staircases were more than once the scene of a family drama and crime. So police kept receiving reports of burglaries and robberies, and it was no different on April 22nd when the dispatcher received a call from Ruthie McCoy, who started talking with horror in her voice about a man who was trying to enter her apartment through her mirror in the bathroom. And it was not known by the officer why they did not treat the report as an attempted burglary, but as an argument between the neighbors. But they also sent a police car to the place. And when the policeman arrived, they found the door to McCoy's flat locked with 4 triggers. And one of the neighbors walking down the corridor said that a dozen or so minutes earlier, she had heard sounds of shots and screams, although she was not sure where they were coming from or the apartment was from Ruthie. However, it was impossible to get inside to check if something had happened there, and because the law enforcement officers did not want to break down the door due to the risk of a lawsuit, they left without explaining the matter. The very next day, one of the tenants of the block contacted the police station concerned that Mrs. McCoy had not visited her in accordance with her daily custom, and her fears were so serious that she also alerted the building administration. And thanks to her, the police cars came again to investigate what had happened. And when the cops finally got to the apartment after the carpenter unlocked the lock, they discovered that Ruth's body was lying on the bedroom floor, and the woman left this world shot by burglars who got into her through a hole in the bathroom wall, which was only covered by a mirror. So this is why the deceased has reported a few days ago earlier that someone was entering through her mirror, and as it turned out, the whole block of flats had such openings in the walls due to architectural errors. And throughout them, it was possible to get from one place to another without much of a problem, and so they began to be used for criminal purposes. After the death of Ruthie McCoy, there were more reports of burglars from behind the mirrors, and people fearing such events at night put up furniture blockings in the bathroom door, not wanting to be attacked while sleeping. And how exactly did this story contribute to the creation of the Candyman? Well, it was when that was reported in the Chicago newspaper The Reader, the editorial office was called by the American actor John Malkovich interested in the adaptation of what happened in the Oklahoma skyscraper. And there, in cooperation, however, it didn't go well, but the star reportedly passed his suggestions to director Bernard Rose, and in 1992, Candyman appeared on the cinema screens. Although Rose has never officially admitted that his production was inspired by Ruthie McCoy murder and the cases of the Chicago burglars entering the apartments through the bathroom mirrors, some references are obvious. First, the movie is set in Chicago, and perhaps not by accident, the first victim to leave this world wounded by the hook of a terrifying Tony Todd is a woman named Ruthie Jean. And the director used the premises and staircases of the Cabrini Green estate, located quite close to the Abla homes and not much different in appearance, as the background for the production. His film adaptation was not only a story about a terrible killer from a mirror, but also referred to the racial conflicts prevailing in Chicago at the time, and the title character is the vengeful spirit of a black artist who was lynched for an affair with a white woman, and he died at the hands of a gang hired by her father, and before he died, his hand was replaced with a hook, and his body was covered with honey so that bees would sting him by thousands of wounds, and after his death, he returns as the Candyman, and his case relates to the history of violence, and that was actually perpetrated in America against black men entering into relationships with white people. So the fact that he appears in the film in a housing estate inhabited mainly by African Americans has also become a way to show the everyday realities of life, the poverty and problems that plagued such city residents. And so the cult horror from the 1992 story is also really just a terror one of the prevailing racial injustice that black Americans had contended with. So curious, tell me, are you going to be in theaters for the remake of a production about Candyman? Would you dare to say his name 5 times in front of a mirror? How many of these horrors from the 80s did you know about, and which one was the scariest for you? Please let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to leave us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and we'll be back with another episode. So until next time.